we've got a few things going on lately, so one step at a time. But let's dive into this here. So I want to, yeah, I gotta tell you right now, this is going to be a little bit difficult for me to get through because this is the first time I'm ever talking about this. So yeah, doing it live, that's the great idea, right?
Cathartic.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? So I want to talk about the blog post that got me fired, and everything always seems like good intentions, and you're doing things that are for the good of the community and that sort of thing. So a few years ago, I was working with a company as a contractor, and I was working on their behalf for the customer, and I noticed that one of the things we were doing is something that people were asking for a lot. It was something that's a very common problem. And so I figured out a unique way to solve the problem. I think I can go ahead and say without any kind of, well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to say this. If you are somebody who is subscribed to my email list, I might give you more details, but for this and a general live audience, I think I'm not going to give details. I'm just going to draw that line right now. But basically, it was a very common problem that people had a lot. And so I said, well, gosh, this would make a good like tutorial or something like that, and started putting that together. And after giving the company this tutorial, I was thinking, this would actually help a lot of people if I had this as a blog post. And so I basically asked the question, would this be okay to put up as a blog post? All the stuff we're doing, to help other people. And the answer was yes. So, okay. So we put it up as a blog post and all that kind of stuff. And everything was fine. And I actually didn't think much about it, although it was actually the most popular blog article that I had for a long time. Obviously, when you solve a problem for people, you're going to get a lot of views on that article. So, yeah. But here's the thing. Things change. And so I actually went to work for this company that I was actually doing the contracting with. I actually started working for them in a full-time position. And that's obviously that changed. But the other thing that changed is the staff at this client. And to this day, I don't really know all the motivations. I don't know why this happened. But they took issue with the way the blog post was done. And this was actually, I'll get to this in a second, but they're fully my fault, fully something that I should have known better as far as part of the way this was structured. But the long and short of it is that they were threatening legal action against the company that I was working for. I think because they couldn't figure out how to do any kind of legal action against me personally, I guess, or they didn't want to. They just wanted the leverage of the company. Basically, it just felt like they just wanted to hurt me, is what it felt like. And so out of that, there's the crisis meetings and all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, the conclusion came down to, the best course of action would be for me to vacate that position. But it would be better if I was actually fired from the position instead of me just stepping down. And so that's exactly what happened. And so I was, fired. They were informed of my my moving on on purpose. Pardon me. And yeah, so that was that. So I want to get into a few things with that, and largely is that I have never been so scared, so gut wrenched in my life that something that I had done for the good of the community would all of a sudden turn into this utter nightmare scenario that, I didn't know if I was going to be, I mean, anything could have happened, right? I mean, I was, at the time I was a contractor, right? So there'd be nothing stopping people from coming after my business for this, right? Or various other things, or even me personally, if there was some sort of, we know how courts are, right? They don't care about actual facts or things that make sense. They just care about whether you can prove something is the reality, right? So they could probably find some way to prove that they were somehow damaged. And this is not a small company. This is not like some mom and pop shop here. We're talking about a major organization with hundreds of thousands of employees. So for them to basically have a threatening posture at me because of a blog post was something I was completely unprepared for. Now, like I said, it was kind of my fault. In hindsight, looking back at it, there's some elements of the article that only made sense if you had context of, like, in this case, what they're really upset with is there was a portion of a MAC address that was on one of the images. I've seen a lot worse. Let's put it that way. But that doesn't make it okay. I could have done more blocking of that. I could have blocked more of it. But they somehow felt that was one thing. But it was also that one of the elements of their environment, like a name that they would have used, that's how they recognized it. Actually, as far as I understand it, the way this happened is somebody new came in and saw the ongoing problem that they were having, and instead of looking at their internal documents, he just immediately started searching Google, and mine was the first result that came up. And so, yeah, there was that whole thing. So it was nasty, but honestly, it was a hard lesson to learn. The things I had to do as a result of that. To this day, that blog post is blocked. I have it removed from my site. If you go to that URL, if you search for this term, even though I've had Google and all the search engines remove this post from their search engine, supposedly, there's no taking it away, not fully. And so what'll end up happening is you'll go to my site and you'll get a message that's not there anymore or whatever. And the funny thing is, a couple funny things actually. During this time, right after I got fired, I mean, I was in a really, really bad spot and not knowing what to do. And so that's actually when I wrote the book I'm hoping to release sometime this summer. Is that. And given that May is Mental Health Month, we might as well talk about the mental health elements of all this and the trauma. I think one of the reasons why I've delayed getting this book out is because of this. And I'm going to go ahead and show this just because I think it's kind of funny, but bastards. Yeah. Yeah, and I honestly, it is a frustrating thing, and I'm glad you can understand the frustration there, and that there's just like, you just feel like you're never safe, is the way this felt to me. Is that, but also it was like I felt like really hurt because I was just trying to help out, and so I just like, okay, what else is coming? And so because I mentioned things in the book that are experiences in my life and working for Citrix and all these kind of things, and so it's been a real challenge for me to want to put out something like a book, because there's that risk, right? I'm taking that risk right now. I mean, it's very real. I very much could be hit with something at some point. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. It's very possible. I hope not. I hope they're benefiting from my fan work and whatnot. I certainly hope so, but who knows? There's always those things that happen. And so this is actually why I have not done a lot of blog posts. There's I could probably show my OneNote of just the sheer amount of topics that I've had over the years, or even blog posts that I've written over the years, and just didn't post because I was so afraid of being hurt, of losing what I have. I mean, gosh, when it comes down to it, it's just like, wow, my livelihood became taken away. We could, lose our house, lose everything we have just because somebody got, their knickers in a twist, I guess is the right way to say that, about a blog post. that didn't actually, when you really boil it down, it's just like no harm was done, really. But it doesn't make it so that even if there's no harm actually done, that doesn't mean I was in the right. And that's the hard thing to admit, is that, no, this was a stupid mistake and it's on me. It's on this guy right here that I made the mistake of saying, you know what, this will be fine. I got in a hurry, is what it amounts to. At the time I was doing the style of consulting work that a lot of us are familiar with, where you are working, easily, 60 to 70-hour weeks. You're, spending a lot of time on a plane, all this kind of stuff happening all at once. And so this was done in the midst of that kind of crazy, and things like that can catch you off guard. But the key here, in my mind, is that I didn't let that stop me. I definitely wanted to. I definitely wanted to get out of technology. And I will admit, the PTSD still comes. There's still those moments where it's just like, I want out. Yeah, I need to get out. I need to go. And I just like rage quit the whole thing and just smoke bomb, bounce. I'm out of here. That those feelings do still come up. I'll be honest with you. But what I came to realize is that there's something to the fact that I helped people solve a problem, that I actually contributed something, and that at the core of what I'm trying to do, there's benefit. And so moving past the trauma of what happened and getting to the fact that people are benefiting from what we do, whether that's just in the technology sense or in my sense, like making content. Yeah, it's scary. I mean, I'm scared right now. I'm scared somebody's going to see this video on YouTube and say, "Oh, that was us. You're blaspheming, or you're like, what's the term? Blaspheming, slandering us, or whatever." It's like obviously not possible. But again, it'd be that lawsuit kind of thing, that kind of scenario.
U.S. courts, you never know how that's going to go.
Right? Yeah, you never know. But honestly, here's the thing: not everybody is going to be kind to you. That's just the way this is. And you're never going to know their motivations. As far as I know, it was just somebody having a bad day. And they just, I don't know. I don't even know who it was. I've never talked to this person. I don't even want to, honestly. I mean, in my mind, it's like, you know what? Cool. You're forgiven. I've moved on. I like my life a lot right now, and there's elements of this that I'm not sure would have happened had I stayed where I was. That's a reality. And so in a lot of ways, it's actually good to have been forced to move on. I just, sometimes you learn the wrong lessons. So yeah, that's the thing about that. But moving on, I mean, that's kind of where I wanted to shift. I mean, now that I've, exposed my soft underbelly, let's wonder how to. It's not saying the whole thing. That's funny. Yeah, we'll just hide it then. Oh no, it's like a slow.
Oh, it's at the bottom, yeah.
Roll on that. It's like how to recover from.
Can you make the box longer? Oh, there it goes.
Mistakes.
Technology, baby, we love it.
Oh, that was awesome.
What would have been even better is if mistake had been spelled wrong. That would have been beautiful.
Yeah, the mistakes. Yes, I realize that could have been very, very possible. Maybe I'll just correct that. But yeah, anyway, so I mean, I'd love your thoughts on this too. Like, how do you recover from just mistakes that come up? Whether they're career ending, like resume generating opportunities, or just things that just happen. What kind of strategies do you What comes to your mind when you think about just moving on?
From my perspective, God knows I've made a ton of mistakes. Obviously, some I feel are definitely my fault. Stupid. Others, I still look back on it and I'm like, what just happened? What? Who? Where? Why? So my issues you're gonna force me to get personal on this. So I've got a couple of issues. One is I do tend to wear my heart on my sleeve. And for the most part, from a public perception, I've kind of stopped myself. I'm going to say recently, I've not done such a good job of that. I feel I've had a lot of punches in the gut that have come pretty damn quick, in quick succession, and it got the best of me. And I did stuff that I really shouldn't have, but it is what it is. You got to get, you pick yourself up, and you get going. And I know that sounds simple, but for me, it isn't simple. And I understand that. It's hard because you take that hit and you feel, whether it's your fault or not your fault, I still tend to take that personally. And I just, it's like you latch onto it, whether you want to or not. And it does affect you, like the 7 stages of grief. It's the same type of thing. You go through the process. What I have found through the years of me being stupid, not stupid, whatever, is I kind of agree with what you were going towards, DJ, is that it always seems, and maybe this is me, looking through the world through rose-colored glasses, but for every big problem that has come up, an opportunity has arisen.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe it's not the best, but I guess it's whenever something really bad happens, by the end of those stages, I'm typically looking back and going, I've come out better for it, whether it's just personally a character building experience, or I've got a different position that is, more of what I was looking to do, or whatever the case may be. That's usually how I've been able to look back. But to get through that recovery is hard. I've been in that same position where you just want to kind of curl up and quit and do your ninja smoke bomb thing and be gone. I don't think there's anything we can say that is going to be this wonderful advice that's going to, get you through to the other side. Because I think for every single one of us, that's a very personal experience to go through. But I think what we want to get across is you will get through it. It is something that you can get through, and it will be better on the other side. I've always, it's always those things. If it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be, which is totally cliche.
Yeah.
But it really is true. At least I think it is. And, the other part of me that I've always had a problem with, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned this public. I know I haven't mentioned it publicly, maybe to some friends here and there in the community, but the other side for me is I I do suffer from depression, so that just kind of makes it harder. And being mental health and all that, so that it does affect me and it hits me. I've got certain rocks in my life that I obviously depend on, my wife being the biggest one. But I've also got a great support system, family and friends, and my friends in the community as well, that I throughout the years, to get through some of this stuff. But yeah, in the end, it's hard, and it's hard when it is definitely something you did, and that it's your fault. But it can be even harder when it's not your fault and somebody just takes a dislike to you and says, "You're gone, buddy. You're out." So that's kind of yeah. I have no words of recovery outside of take that deep breath. Don't make impulsive decisions.
Right. Yeah. And that's actually really important. So in fact, we're going to actually put that in the type window here. It's like, don't make impulsive decisions in a crisis.
Yep.
Important enough to put up there. So yeah. So yeah, honestly, it's really important to, well, that term, like, keep your head about you, that sort of thing, and that sort of thing. It's really key to. Yeah, I hate painting the rosy picture, but honestly, in a crisis, I've been times I'm like, would I be happier just going to work for McDonald's, or going back to Wendy's like I did in
I
college?
missed my job at UPS when I was 18, 19. I used to load trucks at UPS.
Yeah,
3 hours a night. You'd come out sweaty as all get out, but you never took anything home.
exactly.
You put an honest day's or few hours days work in.
Honestly,
Whereas like this stuff, tech, you could be carrying this stuff for weeks, working all, it can be hard. But yeah, I do miss those simple days. There are times.
yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I was actually just coaching someone literally last night about this. Of they were wondering if they weren't setting very good goals for themselves because it was just very simplistic. And I'm like, gosh, I'm to the point now where sometimes I wish I could have a more simple life. But there's nothing wrong with either. If you have a much more simple life in mind where you are, okay, factory work or whatever, if that's what makes you happy, then go for it. There are definitely personality archetypes out there where they would much rather not bring things home with them. Me, I am built for drama. I am just, this is like what I do. All the time, my wife would ask me, and what is it that makes it so that you can handle all this? I mean, the thing about it is that I've got to remind myself when it comes to the traumas that I faced, which are all external, I'm essentially being victimized by that sort of thing. I have dealt with gut wrenching situations before where, various, CEOs are right in my face about, why things aren't working the way they should be, or we made a change that went badly. I think you and I were talking about that recently, that, sometimes things just go badly and you just have to say, yeah, this is bad, but I'm on it. I'm not going to stick with it. And it really is practice. It really is that concept of, when it comes to it, if it's a really bad crisis, it's like the analogy of the trees. If you are a big solid tree and you're strong tree, and the wind is stronger than you in that moment, you're going to get blown over. Whereas the tree that's very flexible, like palm trees and whatnot, they just flex in the wind, just let it happen, and it's just a much they're more prepared for that because they're used to the wind. They grew up in the wind. Big trees that get blown over. This happens here in Tennessee all the time. We don't really have a lot of wind here in the Nashville area. But when it gets windy, it's scary because trees just pop over. This is like, they're not ready for this. This is like, I give up. That is because they didn't have that level of preparedness. So they couldn't really rise to that occasion of big wind. And so it's the same thing in our lives, where if we don't have a solid foundation of where we're I don't want to say where we're at. It's like where we're going or where we could be. If we're not readying ourselves now and putting ourselves into situations that are somewhat stressful, like purposely putting ourselves there, it's going to be really tough when the actual situation comes upon us. And so the temptation for us a lot of the times is to pull back and not get out there and not put ourselves into these situations where we do have that impulse to say, this is too much. I'm just going to go back to what is maybe more comfortable, even if it's less money. I don't care. I'll flip burgers. I'll flip packages. Whatever. That's comfortable. I'm just going to do that. That impulse doesn't really ever go away. That's the other thing we need to recognize, is that actually is something where it's always going to be there. And that's why what Jeff was saying is really important. Don't make impulsive decisions in a crisis, because that impulsive decision is going to be based on that old familiar thing of saying, let's go back to our comfort zone. Let's go back to where it's comfortable. I say lean in. I say lean into these things. And some of them might be more than you were prepared for. But honestly, as someone who also struggles with depression, but also a little bit of like a bipolar thing going on, I can be blindsided by things, and it becomes something where I can't deal with it. There's a physical capability of it. Over the years, I've realized that there's things I can do to prepare for that. And in fact, I think I talk about that in a YouTube episode that I put up last year about this time, actually. It's in my Citrix Coach in a Car, Getting Coffee, You're Going to the Chiropractor series. So I did a 2-part series on mental health. I'll be posting that soon on the website as well. But that I think if I recall correctly, I think I talked a little bit about that too. But honestly, there's strategies that you can use to identify when you're feeling that way and kind of get after it a little bit and say, wait, no. This is not really like reality. This is just my fears messing with me and stuff like that. Check this out. Arkin has a good question here. What about imposter syndrome? Get that a lot.
What is imposter syndrome?
So imposter syndrome is where, yeah. Well, I think that's something that we actually all struggle with, and that is that, look, when it comes to it, we often feel like we are not as good as someone else, that we are an imposter in regards to we don't deserve to be here.
Yep.
Kind of along the lines of what we were talking about. So last week or the week before, they're all blending together, but I think it was the week before, of how it was hard to feel any kind of worthiness about what you're doing. And honestly, just in private conversations Jeff and I have had, I'll tell you, Erkin, that it's sort of like the higher up you go in those kind of realms, the worse it gets. That's an unfortunate truth. Like I said, these fears never really go away. But the reality is that we all have something to contribute, and we all have a right to be here and a right to be heard, right? So that's really important to recognize. But here's the thing about this, and this is hard for IT people to hear because it's a predominantly male environment. We're very much into posturing and things like that. But the reality is you have value, not in what you do, but who you are. And that is really hard for people to hear sometimes. And if you don't recognize that you have value as a person, not just for what you're contributing, but as a person, then it really does come up where you feel like I'm not good enough for this. I don't really, somebody else. I fell into this trap for years of saying, "Oh, somebody else has it." That I don't need to write a blog article on how to set up a Zen desktop environment. Carl Stahl has got that covered for me. I don't have to. I don't have to worry about it. And what I came to realize is that there's more than one way to do something, right? So for me to deny that is meaning that somebody's going to be denied that perspective. And so that's what imposter syndrome essentially does, is it robs the world of your perspective and your unique talents, giftings, and abilities, because you're convinced that someone else has it covered better than you could. And there is no such thing as covering it better than you could.
Well, and I think for imposter, I know that feeling all too well. I always like to say it. I was one of the original CTPs. That's a very proud moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you that at the time and for years afterwards, I never felt like I should have been in that group. I mean, at the time, the people that were in it, we had, Ron and Doug and Madden and, this core group. And I looked at that. People like, I don't belong here. Why am I here? I'm just tagging along, and I'm just being dragged along here. But, it's one of those things that, one, it took Ron beating confidence into me, basically, when we started at Unidesk. And it's, I never really had the full confidence that I attempted to show, during those years of all that stuff. And, but I can look back on it now and say, yeah, I mean, I was, even if it was simply, I was out there putting myself out there, whether it was answering questions in the forums or doing, Bri forum conferences and stuff like that. At the time, it was few and far between, and that was a good thing. And so but sometimes it takes a long time to get over that feeling, and it did for me. And it's when you go down that road of not feeling that like belong, or you're not good enough, you got to try to keep in your mind that there is a reason you are there. There's nobody sitting there going, God, I feel sorry for this guy, let's just bring him in just to make him feel okay. That just really doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you do need to keep, even if you don't believe it in yourself, sometimes just the act of acting like you belong will help you get through it, and then eventually you believe it. It's what do they say? Always dress for the job that you want. That's the same type of thing. Is you may not be interviewing for a vice presidential position,
right?
You want to act the part. You want to dress the part so that people start looking at you as a potential, that you're to be taken seriously, or whatever it may be. It's that same type of thing. Yeah. And I do like the bend don't break analogy you brought up, because I love football. But that's a lot of defense that you see in whether it's football, soccer, or American football, European football. But it is a very real thing. You bend, but don't break. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and honestly, this week I decided to actually invite you into my real world instead of hiding it. And when you talk about imposter syndrome, I'm reminded that it was 20 years ago this month that I released an album that utterly and completely tanked. It was this realization that, hey, you know what? People didn't want to hear what I was playing. At least that's what I was telling myself, is that, and a lot of it was some feedback we got from some actual people in the industry. Ironically, I wasn't here in Nashville at the time, but ironically, these people would have been here in Nashville. That we just didn't have the look, we didn't have the exactly what people were looking for, and so basically, hard pass on that. I think we sold like maybe 100 or so records, mostly to people that I think just felt sorry for us. But it didn't make what we were doing invalid, but it did kind of set up this pattern with me of saying, well, somebody else has got it covered. Somebody else is better than I am. I'm just going to let them do it, And so, I mean, ultimately it comes down to, will I ever do this again? I don't know. People ask me that every now and then. How much do I play these days? And I'm like, you can't really see the level of dust that collects on those from here. But trust me, a lot of dust does collect on those. I don't.
But I don't think that's a bad thing, though. Either is that, I mean, realistically, DJ, you've sold 100 more albums than I ever will. I mean, to me, that's an accomplishment that you went out and did that.
Yeah.
Now, there are times where you are going to try something and it just doesn't work. You and I have talked about, like trying to help people, how do you find out if you're good for a position or not? Or how do you find out if you want to transition from being an IT admin into sales engineering or consulting? The only, really the only real way right now of doing it is to do it. And you're either going to succeed or you're going to fail. And you're going to find out something about yourself, one way or the other. Now, if you succeed, great, you love it, great. If you don't, is it what you do need to sit back and analyze the situation. Is it because I'm just not cut out for that? Because absolutely, there's different skill sets a lot of times between being an admin at an organization versus being, having to go into different companies every week or multiple times a week and working with people you don't know initially. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And just because you fail, whether you decide to, try again or not, yeah, it failed, but that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't take the chance, you'd never know. And then you'd be sitting there going, well, what if I had done that 5 years ago? Wonder where I'd be today. Yeah, it's you can always recover from that stuff as well. Pretty much nothing you do is definitive for the rest of your life.
That's exactly right. And honestly, one of the things that I put forward at the beginning of this year, one of my goals was to take bigger risks. And that's a hard thing to do sometimes because we get caught up in risk avoidance. It's playing it safe. And honestly, the thing that I came to realize was, actually I need to get a stronger nose. I need to fail bigger. It's the only way to grow. I need to get more people to say no to me when I offer them coaching. I need to put out a product that I spend thousands of dollars on and developing and nobody buys. That sort of. That's sort of the wrong analogy, but that sort of thing. I need to be willing to do that. And I think that's the key is being willing to put yourself out there and potentially fail, but to dare the risk, the dream. Yeah.
And I think the other half of that is, don't be afraid to ask. I think I covered this in one of my personal videos. Well, there we go. Is don't be afraid to ask for help. If you feel you need coaching, or someone says something to you, hey, you could really use this as improvement. Don't take it as an insult. Take it as advice, and go back and ask them, or someone that is really good at doing whatever it is, and say, I need some coaching. I need some help developing my speaking habits. I need help writing white papers. It's stuff like that. Take it as a learning experience and try to grow from it. Again, not everybody can do everything, no matter how it looks. And if you don't try, and if you don't try to improve yourself, you're letting yourself down more than anything else. That's the bottom line to me.
It's very true. I mean, if you're not in a place where, well, I'll reveal some survey data that I am seeing out there. I'm seeing people that say, am I too old for this? I feel like I'm late for the game. What's the use in getting started? Again, it's not only imposter syndrome, but sometimes people just feel overwhelmed by stuff, or feeling that they can't start again, or whatever the analogy you want to use there. But the reality is everyone has room for improvement. I literally have people in my life that are in their 60s and 70s that are asking me for advice about how they can improve. Not because I know better, but because I can see what they can. I can see kind of what's past them, and say, oh yeah, actually, have you considered this? Here's a key. And I'm going to try not to call out anybody by name, Carl Webster, but boom, dropped. Sometimes we get into a mode where somebody gives well-intentioned advice, but we didn't ask for it. And that's a tough thing. So my encouragement is twofold here. Just what Jeff was saying, ask for the advice, definitely. But if you get unsolicited advice, just know that it's not a criticism of you. It's somebody that sees potential in you and sees that you have the ability to grow. But IT folks, we kind of suck at giving, constructive feedback. Trust me, I've tried for years. Oh, hey, speaking of age.
Yeah, I wanted to address that question. I can tell you. Yes, I feel every single day I seem to forget.
Just for the podcast listeners, Erkin says, one last thing. Are you finding your memory is getting worse and remembering fixes and ways of doing things that just disappear as you get old? I find it troubling.
It's normal, unfortunately, as I'm finding out. That is normal. The thing is, if I was just about to turn 49 this month, if I was turning 49 back in the 90s or whenever I first started, I would have been truly concerned.
Yeah.
Now you're going to forget things. And this goes back, I think, to last week's. What we talked about is, don't be afraid to say, I don't know, or in this case, maybe I don't remember.
Yep.
The beauty of what we have today is we have Google, and we can find those things out. Yes, it's hard, because from a personal perspective, yeah, I don't like to forget these little things. But keep in mind also that you may be forgetting because you're not using that knowledge on a regular basis. Your career has developed. I tell people, like, I've gotten people say, hey, would you be willing to do some consulting, some implementation, stuff like that? And it's like, I would love to, but I'm not that, really don't feel I'm that guy anymore. I don't have that knowledge that I used to, of which knobs to turn and twist and switches to flip to get the best performance, to make it work magically. I'm not that guy. I could still do the implementations, but it's essentially going to be by the book. So you have to understand that part of it is just getting older. I'm not old. I'm older. right? I hope. Um, but it's also that a lot of it depends on what you're doing. Scripting is always my example for myself.
Right.
Used to be able to script. I back when before PowerShell VB script. I used to be able to do stuff with VB script. Now I could look at VB script and just go, I don't know what I'm doing. But it's the same kind of like PowerShell, that I say today. It's like I can do PowerShell, but it's not something I do regularly enough that it's all up here. I'm not I'm not Carl where I can do stuff. I'm not those guys.
Right.
Where I can just I'd have to Google. Now, I do know enough about those things that I can typically read the code and stuff and interpret. But there's so much out there on Google, and there's so much pressure on ourselves, again, like last week, to be that person that knows it all. Don't try to be that person, because you can't, nobody can. And so it's it is getting older, and part of it is also that the path you're probably on right now doesn't involve those skills anymore, or at least not nearly as much as it used to.
Yeah, Evan says, so true. Most of the documentation I write for myself is written for a 12-year-old. My friend, you have no idea how literally true that actually is right now.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because sometimes it's not just about memory. It's about keeping things down where it matters. And so there might be literally a 12-year-old right now that's out there that in 10 years is going to be trying to figure out how to migrate from this legacy system that called CVAD 1912 that got deployed back in the dark ages of IT. We joke about these things. We think of like this being something that's a reality or not a reality. But the thing is, I have clients out there right now that are dealing with XenApp 4.5, for example, or Exchange.
You mean presentation server 4.5?
Sure, but even like other technologies that are based on like Fox Pro databases and things like that. And the challenge is that there's no documentation. They can't touch it because there's no documentation. Actually, there was a crew talking about this last Friday, that there's a lot of things that come up that that just like, does anybody remember this? No, everybody's gone. I think that was I always forget the guy in Phoenix Project, the technician that knows everything. He's the only one that knows everything. But yeah, so sometimes your documentation is literally being written for a 12-year-old. I know that's not what you meant, but I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, no, I think that's another part, is that you do need to evolve. I used to be somebody that just hated, writing things down, taking notes. Now, if I don't, or if I don't bookmark a website, with answers, I'll either never find it again, or I'll forget that I found it, and I'm right back to doing the same searches that I've done before. So you do need to evolve to take that stuff into it.
That's a great way to say it. So basically, the advice I got in college, I know I was talking about this recently, but the advice I got in college holds true here, is that one of my psychology professors said, look, it's not about you knowing all the answers. It's about you finding the answers, being able to and willing to. In that case, that was pre-Google. I think that was even pre-Lycos, actually. So it was learning how to search through the library or use this new green screen thing, so I could search on the what was that database that Iowa University had? I can't remember what it was, but it was basically this green screen search thing that didn't work very well, but at least got you titles. So at least somewhere to start. We are in a world now where we can learn how to search more effectively so that we don't have to remember things. I don't even keep to this point, I don't actually keep bookmarks anymore. I will search for things. I know there are people that in the end user computing space, especially, that their main benefit or their main reason for making blog posts is so they can go back to it. I have about 6 articles on my website right now that is their sole purpose. They are mostly for me. Or if I'm in a consulting arrangement or some sort of building activity where I need to remember how to use secure XML without IIS, and the article for that was awful. So I just said, okay, well, let's go to my website real quick. We'll pull this up. Here's the instructions step by step, and all the things that I miss every single time I freaking do this. So here's the things to avoid. Boom, we're done. Boom, boom, boom. So, but I got to admit, there was a time recently that I actually did a Google search for that, forgetting that I even had this on my own website. Imagine my surprise when I saw something come up. I'm like, it looks familiar. Oh, that's my website. This actually happened. So you're not alone.
I would be willing to bet. I've never asked Carl Stolther this question, but my guess is that all of that documentation he puts together, a big part of that reason is so he has it later on for himself.
Yeah. Well, we'll get him to come out here and talk to us on that. I think that'd be great.
Yeah. So yeah, priority. Yeah. There is a lack of interest. I have a lack of interest in certain.
Kirk is asking, your priorities change. You don't have as much. Actually, hang on a second. I put the wrong one up on the screen. Last question. Do you find it maybe due to lack of interest as you get older? For example, your priorities change and you don't have as much heart as you used to. Motivating yourself becomes difficult.
Absolutely. I'm going to be honest. Even recently, I was, getting bored with EUC. It was kind of static, getting, it's the same old thing, right? I mean, what has really changed in EUC? Not a whole lot. But then Microsoft started talking about WVD.
Yep.
And that has gotten my interest, just back into the whole field again. And I've made this perfectly clear on my blogs, on Twitter, wherever. I love WVD, not necessarily because of what WVD is in today's form, but I see that it's a validation of the EUC market finally from Microsoft.
Right.
Terminal services, but what have they really done? Those types of things. This is a validation, and it gives competition to vendors that would never be able to compete against a VMware or a Citrix because they've got the brokering system and everything. So you got people like Nerdio that is coming in with these great interfaces, and being able, and you can get in cheaper, and so there's competition again, and it's kind of resetting the whole market, and I'm in love again is basically what it comes down to. It's great. It was an injection into this area of technology that was much needed.
And the funny thing about this, and what I actually find hilarious about this, is that I had the exact opposite response. My response to this was to say, I don't think I want to learn anything new. I think I'm done. I think I'm done learning anything new. I've got some other things that I want to do. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like I'm ready to build up the next group of people that are going to get excited about this stuff and really put a lot into it, and that's great for me. That's me living in my strengths. I've talked about this on some videos on LinkedIn and on the other channel and things like that. But that's zone of genius level stuff where I'm not just living in something I'm good at, but saying, what am I uniquely qualified and just fired up to do? Couldn't have him on this week, but Jeff and I were having a conversation with Dane Young about this recently, and I'm sure he doesn't mind me sharing this, but how much he is just in the same boat of saying, this is really fun, and he really loves the idea of being able to enable people to do. I mean, like work from home and stuff like that right now, so important. It's so critical. How exciting is this that we're living in a time where we have all these tools at our disposal that we can do this? I mean, it's an exciting thing. So it's great that there are people that are willing to kind of, on one hand, there's people that want to learn this stuff and get into it and get excited about it, and then there's others that are saying, that's great. I'm gonna either keep doing this, and that's great, or I'm gonna maybe go a different direction altogether. And this is all great. That's what makes us a great community. Yeah.
Well, and then you got, what I say is, you've got then, like me, who's, I love, I'm doing both, right? I feel like I'm doing both. I'm loving and learning this new technology, because it's really not, but it is, but I'm loving what is happening, and I love being part of that, because I mean, this is my last 20 years plus of this virus, this work at home. This is a watershed moment. This is what we've been preparing for, us doomsday preppers in EUC. So from that, it's exciting, but there's also that part of me that is here doing this with you, DJ, that is, I'm coming up retirement in a number of years, but on the same token, it's I'm not that fully vested guy in EUC from that perspective.
Right.
And I do have experiences and knowledge and everything that I do want to help people with. I'm a few years ago, probably, I can definitely say I was not in the same mindset with if you'd asked me a few years ago, hey, let's hop on and start doing this stuff, I probably would have said no. As time change, your interests change. It doesn't mean that you have no interest in the old stuff. You still might. There might be something new that comes out that sparks your interest again. But on the same token, that's just natural. When you've worked with something for so long, it's going to get boring, and you want to go find something else to do.
And honestly, I think that's a big thing too, as far as motivating yourself. We get confused sometimes when it comes to external motivation versus internal motivation. External motivation is stuff you feel like you have to do. Internal motivation is stuff you want to do. And so if you can focus more on that internal motivation instead of the external motivation, then you're much more likely to be not just happy, but successful. And sometimes we lie to ourselves and think that, I have to do things I don't like in order to be successful. Well, that's just BS. That's just not true at all. In fact,
sometimes you do. Well, sometimes you do. Sometimes
to be successful, though.
Yeah. Well,
to make the bills, sometimes you need to have the skills to pay the bills. Yeah, I get that. But as far as being truly successful and truly being a titan of the industry, it takes a lot more than just, doing what you think you ought to. It takes doing what you really enjoy doing. If Carl didn't, if Carl Stahl didn't enjoy staying up until 2 a.m, in his lab making documentation about how Citrix actually works, then he wouldn't do it if he didn't love it. By the way, even Evan says we should have him on. He loves that guy. So we do too.
Yeah,
we'll get him out of the cave sometime soon.
They let him out
before we take off, just this one final thought. So Erica says, feel so much better now that even big ass CTPs like yourselves have the same feelings. Just full disclosure, we're not CTPs.
I'm not a CTP anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately. And it's okay.
I'm original. I'm OG, baby.
OG, yeah. And I actually exited that to follow this path instead, and I'm actually really happy about it. But yes, we do have the same emotions. He says it's very refreshing and an interesting session today, so we appreciate that. We appreciate that feedback. It's good to know that we're resonating when we talk about fear of failure and things like that. I know Jeff and I both went through a lot of anxiety about doing this in the slightest. It's like, who is going to want to talk about this? I mean, how's this going to work? Because everybody seems to want the tech tips and the things like that, and this is totally not that. We're not doing any of that. But yeah, we know what you meant. Yeah.
Well, and you know, like we started out in the beginning, I think we need more of this. You know, as techies, you know, we always have this heady idea of, you know, what we're supposed to be, what we think people view us as to be, and you know, this is stuff that just needs to be out there. And you know, you shouldn't be ashamed of failures, whether it's yours, whether it's someone else's. You know, it shouldn't matter. Because everybody goes through it. Everybody has gone through something in their lives. So just bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. So Fern says, thank you both for sharing. We appreciate that too. You know, appreciate you being here. A couple of things that you can help us out with, y'all. I mean, I know that there's just a couple people on live, but more will be viewing this later or listening after the fact. We need you to spread the word on this. If this has meant something to you, we actually do need you to take another step here and hit that like button, hit subscribe, but also share it. If you go to, what was that URL we set up? We just did this yesterday. My gosh.
ctxpro.com/THRIVEcast, right? Is that the one?
It was like a subscribe URL, I thought.
Yeah.
I believe it is so smooth. I need like a OneNote or something like that up on the screen so I can just get all these.
We don't have technology for that, you know.
Yeah, I even have a Stream Deck, and I can't figure out how to make that work for this. That's really pathetic. I think it's just Thrive YT. Yes. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So if you just do this little easy to remember shortcut, because we remembered it very well. Thrive YT. In other words, THRIVEcast YT or Thrive IT.
YouTube.
And so, yeah, send people that link, share it. That puts them right to the channel so they can subscribe to the channel and get notified of the next live. Because like Jeff said, we're probably going to be switching up the times a little bit to play around with when people are actually viewing live and engaging. The more this spreads on Twitter and things like that, the better off we'll be. So we definitely need your help. We definitely need your spreading the message as well. Let's see here. So what did I do? I totally messed something up. But anyway, did want to tell you about one final thing before we go, and that is that we don't really have a sponsor for this. I'm kind of my own sponsor. So I will let you know that I'm going to put up the URL for this because my little magic thing on the screen disappeared on me. But hey, that's the kind of thing that happens to me sometimes. But if you go to ctxpro.com/webinar, there are some webinars that I'm giving as far as how to survive work from home. Only I've decided in light of this channel to say how to thrive from home during work from home. And I'm actually giving some advice in that webinar at the very end of it on some personal strategies that I use to work from home effectively and how to rein in my time and things like that and be effective and, you know, be able to have margin to do things like this. It doesn't happen on its own. It's something that has to be done on purpose, but I reveal a lot of those kind of secrets and things like that. So I encourage you to do that. We got 2 more scheduled for this month, and we'll see what happens next month. Who knows? But we really appreciate your support and for sharing the message about what we're doing here. And yeah.
So 2 things.
Yeah.
For my last 2 things. One is I am working with Stephanie Boozer over at the Pug-C headquarters on doing a architectural overview of the various layering technologies.
Nice.
If you caught the one yesterday with James Rankin and Login VSI, I guess I didn't realize that there was a lot of still unknowns about how these things work. So I'm uniquely qualified, I guess, since I played with pretty much all the products out there and know them pretty darn well to just kind of go over, not recommendations, nothing like that, just to go over what makes them different, that type of thing, so that there's a kind of a base understanding. And second of all, you mentioned Carl Webster. Congratulations, Carl, on the Experts Exchange Award. That is awesome. You are the man.
Yeah, I need to pull a picture on that and post that up sometime. But yeah, our friends over there. Actually, it's funny. They're actually here in Tennessee now. They actually moved their headquarters to here in Central Tennessee. So that was cool to let them go visit his actual workplace and hand him that award. So that was cool.
Yeah,
Carl.
So that's so cool. It really is.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate your time and your support, and glad we were able to, speak some hard truth. Thank you for letting me get some things off my chest.
It always feels good. It really does.
Yeah. So
I don't know about maybe it didn't for you, but for me, it always does.
Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah.
What's a net scaler again? I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that I don't know. I mean, I'm dangerous with it.
Indeed. Cool. Well, we've gone way over what we intended to, but that's not a bad thing. We kind of make these as long as we can, I guess, which is what I'm coming across. I've got another appointment I got to get to because life goes on, right? Wish this is all I did with my life. Wouldn't that be great?
Oh, man. Yes. 24-hour stream of our lives. Oh, God, who wants to do that?
Yeah. Not really. I actually, I was kind of thinking that at some point last night. I was like, man, this is just so not glamorous. Yeah, tune in to watch DJ drink wine from a cardboard box in a coffee cup. So
next time, how about margaritas? I'm a margarita guy, so I'll bring my margarita to here.
Speaking of, next time we go to exactly. We might. Actually, there's probably some later opportunities coming up with that. We actually do the end-user computer community in general has a private only because of the various Zoom bombing and whatnot that's going on these days. But if you would like an invite to one of our happy hours that Steve Greenberg and Dane Young are hosting, we can get you that privately. Obviously, you'd have to message us for that. We'd have to respond back. It won't be in the public comments and it won't be made public just because of reasons. But if you'd like to come to one of those, feel free. We'll get you to the inside track, as long as we're doing that, which I don't know how long we'll do it, but at some point we'll have one of these episodes that's going to be, beverages in hand that aren't just coffee. The nice thing about this is if I always use the same cup, you don't know if it's coffee or not. Huh?
It's noon somewhere, right?
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Remember, you can subscribe by going to ctxpro.com/thriveyt, or if you want to get a reminder on your calendar on our next broadcast, just go to ctxpro.com/THRIVEcast. Cheers, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See ya. Thank you.